What's up, everybody? Morning. Well, it's morning when I'm recording this here in good old Charlotte, North Carolina, battling public enemy number one, 485, on my commute to Ballantyne. But here we are. Beautiful sunny day. It's a hot one again. But welcome to Car Ride Sessions. We are going to be talking about front wash. Best practices. I don't know. We're going to get into it. Let's see where we go. Yeah, front wash. How, who wins? Like camera, does the camera win? Does the live win? Yes, is the short answer. They all win. It's all important. This is, do you light for camera? Do you light for live? This is my kind of stance on who takes priority in the whole camera live battle. If you have cameras in the room, you're lighting for video. Period. End of story. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the camera automatically takes priority on every little bit that you do, but it does mean that it is, something that is one of the most important things when it comes to not only front wash, like your front light and how that whole system works, but also programming, making sure your dynamics are hitting that camera lens, and having, just as much impact through the camera lens as it is live. And that just comes down to just good relationship. But that's not the purpose of this video. Let's talk about front wash in general. What makes a good front wash? What do you need? You just grab a couple of lights and throw them up and shine them at the stage. Is there a method to it? Is there, some sort of math? Is there some sort of, like magic sauce to put on it? Yes and no. There's so many different methods. There's so many different ways to go about it. And there's, multiply that by 10. That's how many opinions there are about how to go about front wash and lighting your stage. So let's just go back with basically endless possibilities, endless opinions, endless tools to accomplish it. Sometimes it's just easier to strip it back and go, like, what do I need? Like, let's go back to basics and see if we can build something from there. So let's go all the way back, early 1900s. Fella named Stanley McCandless, considered the father of modern lighting, literally wrote the book on it. And I haven't read it. I've only read some excerpts. But essentially, why that was a need for his time is in the early 1900s, electric was becoming more and more popular. You had different technology of illumination that was becoming more and more popular, but also just more and more available. And you no longer really relied on or needed to rely on gas flame or even sunlight. You had these artificial sources that I would imagine, I wasn't around back then, but I would imagine people didn't quite know what to do with them, and they're blinding performers, and it was just unnatural angles and lighting techniques, and somebody needed to kind of figure it out. So in comes Stanley McCandless and writes the book on basically modern lighting, and this is where we get 45-degree angles. So the whole 45-degree thing came about. That was the lowest that he could get that kept a level of natural light, but wasn't blinding the performers. and then the 45 left and right, and then balancing warm and cool allowed him to dial in like time of day, balance and get like daylight, but also be able to come in from a side for like a morning scene, or come from another side with a pool and come in and do like a nighttime scene. So that's where we get kind of, I just call it the law of 45s, or the rule of 45s. I don't think that's its official, but that's just, I use 45 degree angles. And that's not a hard and fast rule. And let's fast forward to today. In the, they didn't have iMac back in the early 1900s. They didn't have cameras that were taking the screens. So lighting for video is a little bit of a different animal. Some of the same principles apply. What I like to do, 45 is a great angle to start at. It's a great kind of rule of thumb, but I really like to come in shallower than that at around 35 degrees or 40 degrees. Any lower than that, and you're going to start, maybe getting complaints from, the stage of, not being able to see and that kind of stuff. And I still like to come in not quite 45 degrees left and right, but I like to just cut it in half and do like 22 and a half, maybe 30 degrees left and right. That's usually a pretty good, it kind of gets under the eye sockets, and when you come in from the left and right and, do 2-point lighting, but it's really 3-point lighting when you add in the hair light, backlight, rim light, whatever you want to call it. That's when you start to get light, something that you can actually do something with. If you're just pointing straight on, which I actually like going straight on, particularly if I only have so many fixtures and I have to light a wide area. Going straight on and then blending the edges to get an even wash, but also get specials, is a really great, like, budget-friendly, I would say, way of covering a wide area. And then if you're able to get a brighter source or a couple of sources that come in as side fills, that you can then do some more like modeling on the face and get some more like dynamic looks. That's also a really great way to kind of go about it. My technique right now, and something that I whenever I do a front light install, this is what I will almost always pitch first, is I like to have my main key, and what I do is to get the number of fixtures, is I do the amount of zones times 2 equals the amount of fixtures that I need. So and I like to cut the stage. If the stage is super wide, you just can't do this. But if it's like 50 foot or a 40 foot wide stage, you can usually get, and you got some pretty bright sources, you can usually just cut it in half. And so then that means I cut it in half, and I've got 4 lights. I need to light each section with 2-point lighting. So that's when I will. That's, you have to also take into consideration the amount of brightness that you need. So, right now, like, we run 4,800 Kelvin at 60-foot candles across the majority of the stage. We can add it upstage, but in the 95% of the stage that is used the most, that's the level that we're at. And that's just me cutting the stage in half, and I'm doing 2-point lighting, but I'm really doing 3 because I have 6 fixtures now. But essentially what I like to do is cut the stage in half, 2-point lighting, and get each of those sections lit as evenly as possible. And then that's for like a sermon look or a talking head look, that it's got to be perfectly even across the whole stage at a specific foot candle. Then what I like to do for worship is, and this means you really have to have a good relationship with the video team, and you might be in a situation where you have even coverage on both sides of the stage. But if you have like one side of your room has, maybe you've got 2 cameras on house left and only 1 camera on house right. Well, I would look at that and I would go, well, you're kind of loaded on house left, so
So you always want to shoot into the shadow. So not always, it just looks really nice. So what I do is if I've got more cameras on one side of the room than the other, that will determine for like worship where I come in, or like music elements, where I'll come in with my key. So if I've got more cameras on house left, I will come in on house right with heavy key, heavy side, because that gives a nice like kind of rim, silhouette outline when you're shooting into that. And you see the beams behind, and it just looks really nice. And then I come in on house, would come in on the camera side, so it would be house left, and I would add just like a fill. So that's where, and you got to be tasteful with that. You want them being super in the dark, but you also want to complement that nice, look that looks really pretty and beautiful and put together. So that's kind of my strategy in terms of like front wash. And a good place to start is, again, the 45s, but come a little bit shallower, and people will come to the lip of the stage, and I think that's okay, but go like maybe 5 or 6 feet or 7 feet upstage and get your angle there, because that's probably where the primary focus of your stage is going to be. Because you can always, particularly if you're coming in shallower, you can always tilt down and cover the lip of the stage or the floor even pretty easily. So if let's say I've got 4 fixtures to cover, a stage, I will say, okay, what's my distance between the 2 fixtures? And let's say it's like, I got to do 4 feet between or 6 feet between. Then I'll just take that distance and double that between the 2 middle fixtures. So if I've got 4 fixtures, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Fixture 2 and 3, and let's say they're all 5 feet apart, just for basic math. They're 5 feet apart. Well, the distance between fixture 2 and 3, I'm going to make 10 feet. And this is kind of the beauty of being able to draw in 3D. So I would recommend investing in that, is I can drop that in and I can actually see if is 10 feet enough. Again, these are starting points. Is 10 feet enough? Is it too much? Do I need to actually bring them in, or do I need to actually push them out to maybe 12 feet? So it's something that you kind of have to play with, but a good starting point is just the distance between the fixtures, and just pick a distance. In 3D, you might, but also you only have so much rigging up in the air, so you have to take that into account as well. But then I also really, really like to have a side fill. And you might also need a side key, because maybe you're shooting in, almost, 180 or 200 degrees, where your pastors actually has people behind them. So you might actually need to do a true key from the side. But I also like to have a fill, and not really for like talking head. I really like to get that with my heavy hitters. I like to have another set of fixtures that are providing a true fill, and that can be color, that can be whatever, but it can act as a fill, it can act as like color, it can act as my side key, depending on what I have going on. So having kind of your heavy hitter key fixtures, adding some side fill, and then hair light. Hair light I like to have come from the rig. So whenever I design a stage, I always make sure that I have, or I've taken into account, using those fixtures as hair light. I don't like to have a dedicated system for hair light, because it can tend to ruin the look, because it just doesn't, it's very rigid, it's very specific to that role, and so it can sometimes kind of ruin the look. But anyway, that is front light in a nutshell. Hope this was helpful. Yeah. Bye, everybody.